Welcome everyone to our second video blog. Today we will discuss a couple questions about music, which is a very important topic for both of us. Grace, to start us off, could you give us a bit of a context? How important was music to you before the accident?
Well, that's a great question. I think we've alluded to it on the blog, but not really gone into detail. Little background, I started violin when I was 7. I think by the time I was 9, I decided I was going to be a professional, which is kind of odd for a 9-year-old. To give a little context, trying to be a professional is kind of like trying to be like a pro basketball, pro football player. I think by the time I was 12, I was practicing like 4 hours a day, competing. By the time I was in high school, I bumped up to like 5 hours a day. Explains why I was homeschooled, needed time for that. By the time I was 15, I was studying at a college, at a conservatory, so not at a high school level anymore. Went to New York for 2 summers in high school to study with some really great international faculty there. So when I was 18, I actually got to audition for colleges, and I got accepted to and decided to go to the Eastman School of Music, which, if you're not a musician and haven't heard of it, Eastman and Juilliard, those are kind of one of the top 2 music schools in the country. They're kind of rivals, so I ended up going the Eastman route, which was a great route. But yeah, so that's kind of, I spent my first 18 years really doing that. Once I got there, I probably played for 9 or 10 hours every day, studying and performing in various venues. So the question of why I ended up in California, God really had his hand in getting me there and keeping me there. My family was never financially able to do that, so we really depended on scholarships. However, after getting what I thought was my dream, I realized that my dream was pulling me away from God. I didn't really have a lot of time for church, went to church, but didn't have a lot of time for much else. When I went home to see my family in the summer, it was kind of all practice. I looked around and saw the people that were getting jobs, they didn't have time to get married or have families. Pretty much almost no one was a believer. It's a very secular field, any sort of performing arts field is. So I think I just felt God really leading me away from that. I didn't feel like that was going to be a place that I could serve him in. So I moved back to California to be with my family and transferred to California Baptist University, where I was still in their music program, but majored in something different. And because I was in their music program still, that was where I met Ivan, which obviously God definitely had his hand in that. So a little bit of background. Hopefully that helps it make more sense why losing music was so catastrophic to me, because literally my whole lifetime was invested in that. But I think that part we've kind of talked about a lot already.
Yeah. So it's safe to say that playing the violin was a huge part of your life, right?
For sure.
We probably couldn't emphasize that enough. I don't play the violin, I play the piano, but I have been around Grace and other violinists enough to understand that to play the violin, your left hand is on the neck of the instrument, and unlike on a piano where you can see the keyboard in front of you, on a violin you can't see the notes.
No.
All you can do is, with practice, your muscles become familiar with where they're supposed to go, and you combine that with what you hear to know exactly where your left hand should go. With Grace's injuries, because of the accident, she had 2 different strokes in 2 different parts of her brain, and one in the parietal lobe, one in the occipital lobe, and the one in the parietal lobe affects the left side of her body, including the fact that she has no sensation in her left hand anymore, which means that if she's touching any kind of surface or object, she can't feel it, including the neck of a violin, which makes it pretty near impossible to play. I think I said it's like trying to play darts blindfolded,
Mhm.
right? So because you without that sense of touch, it's such a tactile instrument that you really can't play, and so that's also a huge challenge and a really big hurdle for you to try to process through that as well. Right?
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I think we shared I had made some progress just trying to do that. I don't think it's been attempted before, but with the onset of so many seizures, that kind of took my left hand abilities way back down again. So recent attempts, I really haven't been able to play at all, but if that's God's plan for right now, we'll see what happens. But just FYI, that is our current status on that.
Yeah, so you used to teach lessons pretty regularly, right? Going up?
Yes, I did. I think I started teaching when I was 15, and I love teaching. For those of you who don't know, I absolutely love it. Even in college, I worked in health sciences, and I loved helping out with that too. Honestly, for teaching, I think my passion is little kids, teaching little kids music. Love that. I mean, I've taught adults and older people too, but I just always really loved the little ones and getting them started. So yeah, teaching was also a huge part of music for me. So.
Yeah, so I think to wrap up this discussion on music, it has been a huge loss for you. It's maybe one of the biggest losses throughout this whole accident process. And what would be your final comments about how you have seen God help you through that?
Well, I think having an open hand, the decision to move away from my dream originally to move back to California was a big one for me. God rewarded that, gave me plenty of places to play and places to go with it and people to teach. So, he really gave it back to me. This is kind of the final stepping away. And with any grieving process, that takes time. But, we have to keep going. We don't know why, but I have a ton to be thankful for and a ton that God's brought into my life. But I think the question we were going to close with, and the question that started all this, is a couple of questions I got for the Q&A was, do I teach or will I teach right now? So my answer to that is no, I don't, because I'm still kind of stuck in my apartment, and mentally, I really can't handle interacting for more than about 20 minutes. So no. In the future, if that were to change, I really wouldn't be a good teacher because I couldn't demonstrate. However, there is a lot of coaching that goes on in the music field, whether you might have a group of, a string quartet or a small group of musicians, and you have a coach, step in and give them pointers and work on a piece in general where you're not actually demonstrating. So I would probably consider, if an opportunity came up, doing some sort of a coaching type setup. But for now, kind of putting that on hold and seeing what God would bring up maybe later. So that was the original question that got us started on all that. So thank you for sticking with the rabbit trails, but that was my teaching answer.
Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for one more.
Yes, next week we'll be talking about how the accident changed the ways that we read the Bible. So that's our preview.